I'm Afshin Rattansi, and welcome back to Going Underground, broadcasting all around the world from the UAE. Today, after a designation by the U.S. State Department's boss, so-called Marco Narco Rubio, the non-existent Cartel of the Suns becomes an official U.S. foreign terrorist organization. That's Rubio, who received gifts from Florida drug kingpin Orlando Cecilia. And the aim of the designation, linked to Pete Hegseth at the War Department, waiting for the Trump order to attack, is to destroy the nation with the world's largest known oil reserves, Venezuela. This is all as Trump has assembled a massive flotilla of warships and 15,000 soldiers and admitted back in October that he had overtly authorized CIA covert killing operations in Venezuela against Trump, his heir to Bolivarian revolutionary Hugo Chavez, Nicolás Maduro, leading a BRICS nominee country armed by Russia, China, and Iran. In the CIA for nearly 40 years as chief of station in Tokyo and Tel Aviv, let alone posts in Moscow, KL, Prague, and Lithuania, has been Susan Miller. Her final assignment was as assistant director of the CIA's China Mission Center. Susan Miller joins me now from Washington, D.C. Susan, thanks so much for coming on. Before we start, let's just let our audience know you can't talk about anything related to the Trump-Russia issue because of what you describe as criminal complaints, or the Epstein scandal. The New York Times has a report here, distracting to shift the Epstein narrative, because that's all that people are interested in now, clearly on the Hill even. But that's right, isn't it? You can't talk about those issues.
I don't know anything about the Epstein issues, thank God.
You would say that you were in the CIA. You would say that you were in the CIA. Really? You don't know anything about... I mean, describe an average day in the CIA, because clearly our audience will know about all the covert activities and all the... from histories before, say, the 90s, perhaps, in detail. But the rest of it is all from through the lens of Hollywood and Netflix miniseries. I mean, you were chief of station in Tel Aviv. What would an average day be like?
Often a day in Tel Aviv when I was there in this most recent tour would be after a night in a bomb shelter, going back to work and making sure that the embassy hadn't been hit, and it hadn't been, so it was...
What year was that? Sorry, what year was that?
That was that was my most recent tour. So that was between 2018 and 2022, 2019 and 2022. Yeah. In that period of time. It was the last, actually it was no more than that. It was more to 2024, because it was really one of the very last things I did, 23, I should say, last thing I did when, before I retired, was that particular job, was the one at Israel, the chief of station job.
I want to get to Venezuela, but given all the talk in the MAGA movement from which Trump draws his support is clearly now about Israel, it's center stage amongst supporters of Trump and cheerleaders of Trump. What have you made of it all? People talking noticeably about Israel's overt influence over power in the White House. Israel very close with the CIA, would you say? The closest partner? The two, I don't know, three agencies, Shin Bet, Mossad, and Amal, or Aman, I think has two names, the military intelligence.
The military one, yeah. So we're extremely close with Mossad and Shin Bet, and once in a while we would give briefings and talk to the military ones. But they weren't our direct partners. They were the direct partners of like our defense attachés in the embassy. So for us, it was Mossad, and my direct partner was Yossi Cohen back in the day, and his people. And so we would, sit and talk about different things. We would come up with some plans, run them by our different governments, get back together. What I loved about working with the Israelis is they're very American. We could get into shouting matches during meetings sometimes, not like we're super mad, but we're trying to really say, well, my idea is best, when my idea is best kind of thing. And then would be like, hey, you want to go have lunch? And we're all fine. It was just it's a really nice place to work. They're good allies of ours. We need to protect them. But we also need to really be focusing on someday, God forbid, I really hope it happens, a two-state solution.
Yeah, we've talked
because I also would meet with Abu Mazen up in the West Bank, and back in the day, in the 90s, Arafat in Gaza. So, because we were part of the peace process too.
We've talked
not
to
just the
former
different-
MI6. We've talked to former MI6 officials that would often say that different forces were involved, and they had to be very aware while they were in the service that they were, I suppose the phrase would be Britain first, and looking after British interests, not after the interests of
That's
other
right.
countries. Was there a tension there? I don't know whether in the shouting matches you had with them, because it's that tension that's clearly there on the Hill now with, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, hang on a minute, there are people serving foreign countries, not the United States now, that are embedded in US power structures. Was that something you were aware of when you were its chief of station?
No, that was not something I really even focused on with regard to Israel, on that. I do know for a fact that that we argue sometimes with them, but I also know for a fact that we're committed to helping protect them, keep their state, and move forward also with a peace plan eventually for the Middle East. It's worked to some extent. Back when I was in Israel the first time, Egypt and Jordan was friendly, but now they've actually got some teeth behind those friendships. And one would hope that they're able to continue moving forward on that and not forget that.
I'm thinking specifically. I mean, we've interviewed former Israeli prime ministers on this show, and we know that Israel worked with ISIS and Al Qaeda. There are pictures of Netanyahu on the Golan Heights in a hospital treating Al Qaeda fighters. So, was that while? Did you know about the CIA's involvement with Al Qaeda and ISIS Daesh? Of course, now we've seen the head of Al Qaeda in Syria in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. But were you aware that the CIA and Al Qaeda worked so closely in Syria together and in Iraq?
You mean CIA and Al Qaeda worked closely together in Iraq
and Syria,
and
in Syria to overthrow Assad, of course.
To overthrow Assad and stuff like that. So there were times when, and that was, what year? It was a while ago. But there were times when our covert action would allow us, findings would allow us to go and actually have meetings and talk to the quote unquote enemies to try to bring things down as CIA officers.
Did you meet them? Would you wear a chador?
I did not.
Full face mask and talk to Al Qaeda?
No. I never met them. No, not during my time there. Did not meet them.
Yeah, Timber Sycamore. I mean, that's the CIA program, isn't it?
I have never heard that name before. I don't know if it's a real name or if it's something that they have changed since I got it, since I left. But
it's referred to in Congress.
It sounds like one of ours. It sounds like one of ours. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. So, what did you feel like when you saw? Publicly, the United States obviously is opposed to Al Qaeda because of the 9/11 attacks. What did it make you feel when you saw Jelani in the Oval Office with Donald Trump? I think Trump was spraying perfume on him.
He might be. And as you know, I'm not particularly, a lot of Americans aren't particularly Trump fans, but this one actually interests me. I think this is something that we might be able to work through and that is more apolitical than other things that he's
But you don't think ordinary New Yorkers would have a problem with that, at the very least? I mean, obviously, everyone, most of the world, has a problem with Al Qaeda and ISIS Daesh.
Right. Right.
You have less of a problem
Everybody
because
does.
the CIA worked with ISIS Daesh and Al Qaeda.
If we worked with them, we would know what they were doing better, that's for sure, and understand it. If the plan is for us to work with them, to work on a security agreement, which we have done with enemies before, and we've played that part as well as side by side with the diplomats, honestly, and whatever other countries are involved. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that was happening, and I would call it possibly hopeful. We could see, you know, but I don't know enough about it right now. Yeah.
Out of it, I mean, we'll get on to Venezuela, but then whilst you're doing all this work, what do you think of the press reporting of what U.S. foreign policy is? I mean, when you were in Tel Aviv, chief of station, or any of the other places, do you guys all get together in the canteen and just laugh at how poor the journalism is, which is about all these places? Because obviously the wider public are not aware of what you were talking about there.
So the bottom line is that the wider public right now likes little dibs and dabs, like on a short podcast or something like that, as opposed to reading a full news press where you can get normally the entire, here's what this side thinks, here's what this side thinks, here's what this side thinks, here's the plan right now. Do we, the journalists, think that it has a chance in hell to work? Don't know, but that kind of thing. So a long way of saying is that right now I don't have any inside scoop other than what I'm seeing and kind of hearing from some of my colleagues and things like that are also.
No, I just meant you must be while the average American detests ISIS and Al Qaeda. They would be, and the way the newspapers would be reporting it would be ISIS and Al Qaeda is the enemy. In fact, that's why the newspapers once in the United States celebrated Qasem Soleimani as a fighter with the American troops against ISIS and Al Qaeda.
He was, and now it's switched. Now we have to go to ISIS and Al Qaeda to go back against Iran. So there you have it. Is all I can say. I wasn't, of course, privy to that particular finding or that those discussions, but my sense of it is that we want to somehow bring something to the table that will stir things up and get people to open their eyes and try to get people that are our enemies on our side. We have to talk to them. We can't just sit there and throw bricks at them.
Susan Miller, I'll stop you there. More from the 39-year CIA veteran after this break. Welcome back to Going Underground. I'm still here with 39-year CIA veteran Susan Miller. Susan, we were talking about Qasem Soleimani, actually, and the tension there between U.S. support for Qasem Soleimani's policy against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the tensions, of course, with Iran, at which recently the United States bombed. What was your role in the killing of Qasem Soleimani?
So what happened was the agency and the Israelis and actually some other partners in the Middle East were talking about that, this guy is sort of like the Hitler in the Middle East. He's not going to be stopped unless he is actually stopped. And this was taken back to the NSC, which has to approve different kinds of operations. And what it was decided between us and Israel is that we were going to do an assassination op. And then what that means is we were going to assassinate him. Our finding agreed with it. It was a bilateral, total support from both sides of the House and Senate. And so it was not really controversial here. The thought was, and the analysis had been for many, many years, that if we got rid of Soleimani at the right time, IRGC would fall apart. It's like the people that tried to go after Hitler at the right time, but they missed him. He barely escaped it.
So
Had he not escaped it,
so it's basically different. This Thomas Carlyle view of history that individual leaders are taken out as if that's going to change anything. Like take Gaddafi out, take Saddam Hussein out. I mean, how can they be philosophically?
It does change things. It does change some things. Not everything, but like taking bin Laden out stopped Al Qaeda. in its tracks. Taking Soleimani out, there hasn't been a single IRGC problem since then. Taking,
Al Qaeda was resurgent.
would have stopped World War II.
Al Qaeda was resurgent after the death of bin Laden, and it was international.
Extent, yeah.
I mean, it surely gets much worse. I mean, quite
to some extent, but they don't have the same leadership. They don't have the same way of working things. They don't have the same networks around the world. I'm not saying terrorism is gone forever. What I'm saying is it disrupted it, and it has disrupted it for many years.
I mean, many people would say he was doing nothing in that Pakistani house opposite the main military barracks, and it was, he'd outlived his use by the Al Qaeda cadre, which then became decentralized all over Southeast Asia. But more importantly,
that's for sure. The decentralization.
Does this view of history, of the way geopolitics works, mean that other countries will now go and attack and kill, I don't know, General Dan Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? If you start doing that...
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't your role in the murder of Qasem Soleimani give other countries the right to knock out General Kane?
No, because we're the good guys. It's like, does Hitler have the right to go and kill, Roosevelt or whoever was president at the time? Roosevelt's not the one that was putting people in concentration camps, things like that.
It's not the individual. I mean, Qasem Soleimani, we actually interviewed his daughter the day after the strike. He was one general. The IRGC, of course, as you, I'm sure, will say yes to, is the IRGC is stronger than ever, and it didn't stop the Iranians. Killing one person just creates a vacancy, clearly. But, okay.
Yeah. I would disagree with "they are stronger than ever" idea. I'm just saying that they spent a long time after that in utter disarray because none of them thought he would ever die, and nobody was thinking, well, who's going to actually lead this? And so from my understanding, there's a lot of infighting and things like that, and they don't have the same kind of charismatic leader right now.
I lived in Tehran, and there was a little laughter for about a year, and I remember people saying, I think this was even on public view, that the CIA found it very difficult to get intel from inside Iran. And I suppose a lot of it would be reliant on Israeli intel, perhaps, which was very effective in assassinating scientists in Iran.
Yeah, it's always extremely hard to get into what we call closed societies, like an Iran, like a Russia, like a China, like a Syria, like a Lebanon. It's all very hard to get into, but at the same time, there are ways to do it, and that's why these things take a long time to plan, think out, go through, figure out how do we first find them, how do we do this, how do we do that. This is not something that's done like I'm asked to do something on a Monday and the following Saturday we do it. This one took years, and so they all do. And so should we do it? Yes, if there is a real reason, and that reason needs to fall under all of the precepts that are set before both us and, frankly, the Israelis when it comes to what is right ethically and what is not. And we look at that as well. And so is this a person we're just going after because he might be a terrorist someday? Or is this a person that we're going after because he is one? He's already killed a bunch of Westerners and Europeans and Americans and other people around the world, and is causing havoc in his own country. It's all very, very different. We don't just kind of pick somebody one day. You could probably count on like one hand.
Yeah,
how
no,
many
I did. I didn't.
hit over
I
the
wasn't
last-
suggesting that, but
Yeah.
I mean, it looks to the outside as if Israel said this is a guy to hit because he's attacking Al Qaeda, and we support Al Qaeda and ISIS, Daesh, and Hamas for that matter, because Israel is financing Hamas. Let's go to Venezuela.
Yeah.
In the New York Times here, the case for overthrowing Maduro. Clearly, in the United States, people are talking about regime change in Venezuela. What do you make of this Operation Southern Spear, largest show of U.S. force since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, of course, brought the world to the edge of nuclear war and nuclear destruction? What is this cartel of the Suns? Did you ever come across it? Does it even exist? People saying it actually was a CIA operation, the cartel of the Suns. It was used in the 90s to import cocaine into the United States. And Rubio is using this phrase and saying Maduro is the head of it, but actually it was a CIA operation. When you were at the CIA, did you come across the Cartel of the Suns, named after Ramon Guillén Davila?
I never heard of that in the 90s. I wasn't obviously involved in the 90s in that area of the world, but I think I would have heard of that by now. But Cartel of the Suns, that it was actually ours, that we were maybe. What I can see is that when we do support like anti-government groups in a country, let's say we did it in Venezuela, and again, I'm not sure we did, but
well, Trump now says it's overt, right? Trump announced the CIA is there. I'm not sure what you would have said if you'd been chief of state in Caracas.
I'm talking about before when I was around. But the thing is that what we do is we go and we think through it. What is it that we really want to stop? Well, we want to stop the cartels. Is the Venezuelan government doing anything to stop the cartels? If the answer is no, and we really feel like we need to stop all of these drugs coming into the States and stop this.
Well, wait, so sorry to interrupt, Susan, but the CIA brings the drugs in, right? We know from Iran-Contra onwards that it was the CIA that are involved in drug trafficking. Isn't it?
I disagree with that. We do not drug traffic. We are not allowed to break the law like that.
But it's in congressional record. It's in congressional record.
Maybe back in the day.
You were at the CIA. You were at the CIA in 1985.
Right. I was doing Russia at the time. Could we have been doing something like that? 100%. But a lot of the laws and rules have changed over time because we realized they were wrong. And I'm not saying CIA realized it, but it was the U.S. government realized this is not a good use of CIA covert action operations. This is not a good idea. That is what we have our own drug enforcement agency. They're the ones that need to be doing it, not us. And so for that reason, we are not going to be in the law enforcement. But if DEA asks us, hey, if you guys have any sources down in Venezuela, can you ask them a couple of questions about this and that on drugs? Well, we'll do that. But we are not normally do we go and do something like that on a the threat that it poses is not the same as the threat from a Soleimani or a bin Laden or something like that is what I'm trying to get at.
Soleimani was fighting the supporters of bin Laden. But anyway, but then why? So it's just a coincidence that in Afghanistan, when the CIA left, along with all the U.S. military, the drug production came down to zero under the Taliban. We're not saying we support the Taliban on this program, but it did. While when the CIA were in Afghanistan, the drug production in Afghanistan was astronomical. Just coincidence.
No, I'm telling you, we don't do that. It is a coincidence. There is no way. I sit on these boards when I was there. I would sit on these covert action boards for other offices. We would all of us senior officers would. I would have heard that. And I can tell you everybody in that room would have objected to it. So
hopefully they would.
Way.
Hopefully they would.
No way. I think that is just internet BS. just to, that's just not true.
So the CIA, after the Iran-Contra, when it was clearly selling drugs, and after Operation, which was the operation in the United States, that was also named as regarding drugs in the 1980s, it's the old CIA. I mean, the thing about these events are they're always admitted post hoc, and the CIA always then say it'll never happen again. It just happened back then. But then, what do you make of Rubio saying the Cartel of the Suns is this foreign terrorist organization as is designated now? Shouldn't John Ratcliffe mention that this is some old operation from before? And Rubio himself lived in the house of a Florida drug trafficker. He got gifts from them.
So
what is behind this Venezuela? I mean, is it a distraction, the Venezuela operation? All this flotilla, all these soldiers, American soldiers there, what are they doing?
So here's the thing is I disagree that this is all part of something that happened in the 80s, because I'm not even sure that happened.
Well, the Iran-Contra deal.
Yeah, well, the Iran-Contra thing is something a little bit different. The Iran-Contra deal, as it relates to drugs?
Yeah.
In what way? How did that relate to drugs?
It was the selling of drugs to buy arms. The drug traffickers financed the Contras in Nicaragua.
Right.
Oliver North.
But I thought that was also about weapons. Yeah. No, there's no way. That day is over. That one got totally, what do I want to say? Totally looked at by various people and stuff. And we are absolutely not doing that. There's no way.
But 60 Minutes in CBS News. Can I just say CBS News covered this at 60 Minutes, that the Cartel of the Suns was a CIA operation to import 22 tons of cocaine in the early 90s when you were at the CIA. You've never heard of this at all?
I had not. I was not in that area and we, at the time, it would have been highly classified. I would not have heard of it. And I was always doing Russia stuff, and I was doing China stuff. I was not doing this kind of thing. And so you can ask another CIA officer who's got some Latin America background if they heard of it back then. But certainly I'm now recalling some of the news articles on it, but I did not know about it back then. I was not in a position. I was the most junior of junior officers. If I had been a senior manager, maybe I would have been, because then I would have been in that group that heard about things.
Next time,
but
Susan,
in my world, it didn't exist.
Next time, Susan, you're going to have to come on and talk about certainly China and your time at your final posting in China, on China, of course. But Susan Miller, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for the show. Our continued condolences to those bereaved by the UK-US EU armed genocide across Palestine. We'll be back on Saturday. Until then, keep in touch via all our social media. If it's not censored in your country, and head to our channel, Going Underground TV on rumble.com, to watch new and old episodes of Going Underground. See you Saturday.